come in and.
No.
Dave, is there more people behind you coming up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. You could give a report to leave. Well, I have to get up.
Morning.
Now we better exercise.
Your names are down there in Massachusetts. That's my dad.
No, it's like, I'm not here yet.
Oh. No, I was here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You sitting here still, Diane?
Yeah, except some.
Yeah, I'll sit up. I'll sit up.
Good morning.
You know what? It's gonna be a pretty day. I was reading reports of speculative reports of coming weather always Supposedly we don't have a big snow here, and I'm just so hoping when they get started.
That works for me. I don't ski.
I love it.
I imagine they'll have plenty up there.
I worry about what happens with bugs and droughts and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're saying it's gonna be wet.
The bigger the snowpack, the better off we are.
Yep, as long as they get it up high.
Madam Clerk, are we ready? Good morning. It is 9:05 and I call this regularly scheduled meeting to order of the Board of Bonner County Commissioners. I am Chairman Luke Ahmet. Commissioner Asia Williams is present and Commissioner Steve Bradshaw is also present. If you would please rise for Pastor Chris Bassett.
Heavenly Father, as we enter into Thanksgiving, we are so thankful and grateful for all of the blessings that you've poured out into our lives and over this amazing state and its county. We know that in order for the blessing to flow, we have to be good stewards. So Lord, I pray that a real sense of managing resources in a way that honors you, in a way that brings you glory, would really open our hearts as with gratitude, we're grateful for what we have and we'll steward your resources for your business. We thank you, God, for what you're doing. We bless the county commissioners. We bless all the elected officials, and we are grateful for them. We ask, God, that your hand would be in and on their life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And before we start, Pastor, would you just let the county know how you guys did with your cornhole tournament?
Yeah. So we did great at the cornhole tournament. We were able to raise over $5,000 for Freedom House, which is safe and sober housing specifically for men, this fundraiser. And we had over 100 people attend and had 45 volunteers. It was a great event.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get you to hand me the. Thank you, sir. All right. The purpose of the regular business meeting is for the Board of County Commissioners to conduct the business of Bonner County publicly. Regular business meetings do not constitute public hearings wherein the public has the right to be heard on every agendized item. However, at the discretion of the chair, everyone may be afforded an opportunity to speak on a particular issue if recognized by the chair. Any unrecognized comments or disruptive behavior will be grounds for removal from the board meeting by the chair and may subject the person being removed to criminal prosecution according to law. Today, I'm also going to read the public comment section because there was a vigorous First Amendment opportunity last week. The purpose for the public comment segment of the Board of County Commissioners business meeting is to enable citizens with issues or concerns which they wish to bring to the board's attention and afford an opportunity for consideration on a future agenda for possible board action. The board will not engage in dialogue with the presenter during this session, but rather may choose to schedule the presenter's topic for board consideration at a future business meeting. Questions may be directed to individual board members for the purpose of clarifying issues or to obtain additional information for the purpose of scheduling the matter for a future business meeting. However, no action will be taken on any issue or concern brought to the board's attention during this session. The chair will not entertain under any circumstances comments derogatory in nature toward any board member, staff member, elected official, or member of the public. I will add that Prosecutor Marshall has given some guidance as of this year that has, to a certain degree, said that elected officials, and the Supreme Court has weighed in, elected officials have a different expectation. But for the others, please mind that. All right, our first speaker for today that is signed up, and it's going to go in a similar order. I'm going to go through the list. I will take the people that are online. Miss Nicholson, I see that your hand's up. I will get to you, but I'm going to do the people in person, the people online, and then I will take a last call before we proceed. I am going to limit comments to 3 minutes, and there is no shared time because this is not a hearing today. Miss Lunsford.
Amy Lunsford for the record. I have seen a lot of these Tuesdays meetings. I've seen moments when the room was stacked against Luke and Steve, and more recently, Asia. It's all a part of being in the public eye as an elected official. The public can be fickle, but I try my best to treat you all with equity. Last Thursday's meeting was hot with debate, and elected officials lost their composure. Asia, you stated that you were the only conservative board member. This is not the first time I've heard this statement. There was a PRR email sent from the ICCO, followed by the BCRCC censor of Luke and Steve. It's crazy that our elected officials and the public are trying to define what being a Republican means for everyone else, especially when most arguments are based purely on opinion. There is a handbook, or where is the handbook on being the perfect Republican? Bonner County is a diverse and packed with caring folks that come from different backgrounds. Here in the 80s, people didn't fight over their neighbors were Republican enough. This divide in our community has glorified polarized arguments over the far right and the far left, leaving the rest of us feeling like there isn't enough representation for the gray areas in between. In an email sent March 2023 between Sheriff Wheeler, Asia, and others, Wheeler states, "It is time to draft a letter of no confidence for Luke and Steve." This email suggests that having a perspective that doesn't align with Wheeler, Asia, and the ICCO, Luke and Steve have failed in their roles as elected officials and Republicans. Ironically, by actively eliminating the difference of opinions, Wheeler, Asia, and the ICCO have failed not only to represent the diverse population of Bonner County, but have laid grounds for potential collusion. We don't need a select few deciding what Republican means for the rest of us, nor what kind of elected officials are best suited to represent the public. So I ask, is this board able to fairly represent and hear all of Bonner County? Can the board move forward in a way where each elected official can both represent their own beliefs and professionally respect the beliefs of others? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lunsford. Our next speaker is Mr. Daniel Michaels.
Do you mind if I play my guitar?
Your freedom, hey.
It won't be anything offensive. And you just indulge me
Sure.
for a minute.
Yes, sir.
And I will have a couple comments. Nothing long.
Okay.
Do you mind if I sit right here?
No, that's fine. So you're Daniel Michaels for the record.
Yes. Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Daniel Michaels for the record.
Thank you.
And I didn't mean to use your bench without permission.
No.
So, yeah, I watch a lot of meetings almost every Tuesday. I've spoken to Steve, I've spoken to Asia. Not a lot of good things coming out of the meetings. I mean, there might be good things, but from what we see, It's a little bit painful to watch. And I'm not putting blame on anybody. I don't know where it all started, but it seems pretty broken. And I would love to see it amended. And I don't know if that's possible at this point, but that's all I have to say. And I will, if you guys let me. I thought this song was kind of appropriate. As I was walking that ribbon highway, I looked above me, the endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. I said this land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to New York Island, a redwood forest, a Gulf Stream water. I said this land was made for you and me. I roamed and rambled and followed my footsteps to sparkling sand of her diamond deserts. And all around me a voice kept saying, it said this land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to New York Island, a redwood forest, a Gulf Stream water. I said this land was made for you, and this land was made for you, and this land was made for you and me. Woody Guthrie? That is, yes, Woody Guthrie. That is actually a protest song. We won't get into that.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels.
I hadn't heard it.
Mr. Thomas Fletcher.
Thomas Fletcher for the record. Well, you do not want to hear me sing. But I certainly want to echo the spirit of the song and of the moment that we should really try to find peace, find common ground. I would submit, though, that one of the premises of finding peace and common ground and agreeableness would be honesty. I mean, if we're going to have normal human intercourse, it has to be based on a common element of being honest with one another. I think we can all agree to that. I believe God sort of gave us a message a long time ago to Moses. Thou shalt not bear false witness. If you're deceitful and you lie, that's not a good way to be peaceful with fellow human beings. I think that's fairly reasonable. I would ask you to consider a very early, shall we say, introduction to one of the commissioners in this room. Transport yourself back to the primary campaign a year ago for District 2. It was at one of the forums. There was a random citizen of Bonner County who asked of one of the candidates, gee, I've never seen you before. Who are you? Are you a Republican? To which that candidate said, oh yes, I'm a Republican. I've been voting Republican all my life. And in fact, in the platform of that human being, it is stated, quote, I'm a conservative, liberty-minded Christian who has always been a Republican voter. Really? Well, if you obtain voting records legally, this is a PRR, you discover that that person voted for the very first time as a registered Republican for her own primary, and in fact registered as a Republican the day before it was legally possible to register at a party affiliation, and that was just before declaring her candidacy for commissioner. I would like to submit this in public record. This is a public record. One other point. We're kind of out of time? Okay. Well, let me cut. I have a couple of other prevarications. Just keep in mind, if someone is going to speak, they need to speak truthfully. I'm going to be accused by more than one person in this room of harassment.
Mr. Fletcher, but hopefully it won't be right now, and I'm not going to accuse you of that today, but your time has expired.
I am going to correct you in real time. Somewhere, or however you're doing that, you're getting the incorrect information. And so if you care about honesty, you should recognize that I told the truth, and you actually did this during the primary back and forth, and I provided you with the information, so let's not be disingenuous. I was honest. I was an unaffiliated voter, and I said that I always voted on the Republican ticket. I voted for Trump. You're saying I only voted for myself. That's not accurate. I don't know how you're getting the information, but you're not accurate on when I first started voting. I started voting the day that I was allowed to vote. I don't know what that has to do with Bonner County business, but since the chair allowed you to talk about my voting, it's important for me to correct that. What you said was inaccurate. And I proved that to you when you were on Facebook during primary, and I spoke with you about it.
Miss Diane Welly.
Diane Welly for the record. As I said last week, I was inspired by faith to put on the armor of God in preparation for speaking with this board. As long as we're permitted to use our free speech, I intend to speak from that inspiration. I stated last week, following my true-false questions to Commissioner Amon, the majority of which he refused to answer, that I would approach today wearing the boots of peace. We all need peace. This country can only thrive with it. I'm old, I'm retired, I love this country, and I want nothing more than to retire quietly here in peace. However, as we know, and as history has shown, if you want peace, prepare for war. Before the fall of the Roman Empire, the quality of its army had begun to deteriorate, and the decay of the army came from within. The army had grown weak from being idle during a long time of peace and stopped wearing its protective armor. This is what the good people of Bonner County are witnessing in our previously peaceful slice of heaven on earth. We became complacent, not paying attention to those who could and did begin the corrosion of our county, and what we now see week after week is nothing short of war. A strong peacetime citizenry would have warranted would-be potential entities that the battle would not be worth the destruction of our county. We would have stopped early on any past commission from becoming power-hungry and deceitful. We would have recognized that they were turning their heads when audits should have occurred and did not. We could have stopped a tragedy before it happened. They could have prevented something so basically sweet and wonderful as our county fair from becoming a horror show of political grabs and theft and death. My heart goes out to the current fair board who now find themselves having to pick up the pieces, and we're doing so to this day, while others are still using the fairgrounds as a battleground. Dear Fair Board, your struggles are not unnoticed nor unappreciated. Thank you. I challenge Bonner County to put on the full armor so that you can take your stand against a darkness that has descended on our governing entities. Stand your ground. Stand with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes with the hope of peace. Ephesians tell us that the shield of faith by which you can extinguish the flaming arrows of the enemy. Watch carefully on social media for flaming arrows being shot back and forth. Watch the grotesque actions that are aimed at one commissioner who is attempting to do the will of the people. of Bonner County, to serve them, to try to discover at what point those who are supposed to represent us began stealing from us, scheming against us, and deceiving us. Commissioner Williams stands alone, surrounded by powerful people who direct others
Welly,
to abuse her.
Miss Welly, in the same manner that I asked Mr. Fletcher to stop, your 3 minutes have expired. Please take your seat.
Thank you.
Mr. Daniel Welly, or Dan Welly, excuse me.
Daniel Willie for the record. I want to address this commission not as a warning, not as a threat, just with some observations that I hope will help. We have seen actions on this board that are not what I would call appropriate. I had to look up the definition, and that definition comes down to the appearance of impropriety. This means an official act that would lead a reasonable person to conclude that someone has engaged in a conduct that reflects adversely on that person's honesty, impartiality, temperament, or fitness to serve the public trust. This is when something is done that appears to have the appearance of impropriety, there is a simple cure. Admit the act was incidental, apologize for it, having given the appearance of impropriety. On the other hand, offering no defense for the said act is tantamount to an admission of guilt. So, not having said anything about that particular situation, the guilt lies on the shoulder of the one who performed the act. This appearance of impropriety is something that has come into the daily vernacular years ago. Commissioner Omont was in the Army. I don't know if anybody else served in here in the military. I'm sure there are members in the military. There are other people in here who served in government service. When you are in government service, you have to avoid the appearance of impropriety. The appearance of impropriety can lead people to see something other than what you meant. It is wrong. You have to be careful about it. Secondly, voting for something that reflects adversely on someone's honesty or fitness to serve in that public trust can be construed as not only the appearance of impropriety, but as a conflict of interest and even corruption. Thirdly, failure to provide a defense in court when the evidence is against you overwhelmingly and will likely result in an adverse outcome is called a tacit admission of guilt. These are things to avoid. If you have a defense, you offer it. If you haven't offered a defense, you cannot criticize the people who made the decision against you. You have negated your ability to make that defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welly. Ms. Darla Fletcher.
You're right. Good morning, Darla Fletcher, for the record. I have just one thing to say. I'm not going to do a lot of editorializing. I'd like to read you some court documents and enter them into the record. These things really are resonating with me in our current climate. A lot of what we have to go on is somebody's history, because history repeats. And my only editorial comment would be that there are categories of lies, but broadly speaking, I would divide them into lies of commission and lies of omission. And I'd like to talk about that. And I'm just going to read you some facts out of court records. November 20th, 2009, Asia Williams versus Safe Corporation and Oregon Corporation. Ms. Williams is asking for, she made a complaint for breach of employment contract, wrongful discharge, employment discrimination, and asked for $300,000. I'll give you the bottom line. Basically, this resonates with me. The employers, one of many comments that you're going to have an opportunity to see them all, but because of the times when plaintiff's performance did not meet reasonable expectations for a claims adjuster, defendant provided plaintiff with appropriate supervision, feedback.
I'm gonna give you your time back. You're at 1:30. Pardon me, whoever is online, could those be muted? And downstairs, it was at 1:30. Please proceed, Ms. Fletcher.
Plaintiff's performance did not meet reasonable expectations for a claims adjuster. Defendant provided the plaintiff with appropriate supervision, feedback, counseling, and direction regarding attendance, accountability, workplace conduct, ability to get along with others, and communication with claimants, among other things. Next employer lawsuit was Asia Williams versus Kootenai Hospital District. Complaint for damages. She didn't ask for a specific amount, but, or at least not in what I read. However, I will point out that after 4 years, this very interestingly went to arbitration, sealed arbitration, on the exact day that we held our primary. So if you keep the ball in the air long enough, the public won't know until after the primary what this person's been up to. And I'd like to read you some comments within the court record. This would be an affidavit coming out of Kootenai County's lawyers. Ms. Williams did not interview the nurse in question, nor did she review the patient's medical record about the incident. She did not discuss the situation with the hospital before alleging her complaint to the police. She attempted to rebut the preliminary conclusions, saying that she did complete her investigation, shifting all blame to the nursing staff for not completing the protocols.
Ms. Fletcher, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. I'll put this all into the public record, because I want everybody to have a chance to see it, to including where she asked what the.
Ms. Fletcher.
So as I
do.
did with Dr. Fletcher, if the board is going to
Miss-
entertain this, I'm going to respond in real time. So with respect to
Miss
State
Williams.
Corporation,
Miss
you
Williams.
allowed it, and I'm going to do it in
It
real
is
time.
9:30 and we will go
We're
into
going
a
to come back
10-minute
to the same
recess.
thing. You literally just explained that that's not what this meeting doesn't make any sense. Wasn't said to me, that should make your group of people believe it even more because it wasn't said by me. It's disgusting for you guys to sit here and be mad at me because there's a restraining order, yet not one single time have you guys turned to Commissioner Bradshaw and addressed, he
Madam
caused the
Clerk.
problem that you're mad about.
Start filming. All right, it is 9:40 and we are returning back to our regularly scheduled business meeting, and we will continue with public comment from the public. And I will remind the board that the board will not engage with the presenter during this session, but rather may choose to schedule the presenter's topic.
These aren't topics, and so you're picking and choosing what to follow. The business meeting isn't for people to say, I found a court document, so you can't have it both ways. So if you allow them to do it, I am going to engage because you're not going to perpetuate lies at the business meeting.
I'm not perpetuating lies, Commissioner
There's nothing
Williams.
about what they're asking for to go on the business agenda for next week, is there? What's the agenda item that she's requesting?
Commissioner Williams, freedom of speech is freedom of speech. I don't tell these people what to say.
Yet this is where there's a discrepancy, Commissioner Ahmet. How many times did you call for recess and walk away when you didn't like what was being told? What you just read was the purpose of public comment is to bring forward issues and concerns to put on the agenda. What is coming forth is not
I don't speak for the
that.
citizens' concerns. The citizens
So,
are allowed to speak for themselves
I'm
in
gonna
a
tell you,
republic.
this is what a chair would do.
It is 9:41 and we will go into a 20-minute recess. Thank you. This is not how this will work.
No, it's not how it will work. You're
Thank
the
you.
one who's just
Now I'm drinking mineral water, so. Madam Clerk, permission to proceed. Thank you, ma'am. It is 9:53, and we are coming out of recess to continue with the public comment section of our regularly scheduled business meeting. We have currently exhausted the list of people who have signed up in person, and I will now proceed to offer an opportunity for people that are online to speak. Ms. Anderson, it is 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Can you
You
hear
have to
me?
unmute. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Christina L. Nicholas Anderson for the record. We know that on July 26th, Sheriff Wheeler released his infamous investigation blaming the former fair manager Darcy Smith for alleged missing funds at the Bonner County Fairgrounds. We also know that he shifted some blame back to the clerk and the comptroller, stating they helped enable the fraud. We also have documentation now that the Fair Board didn't know how much money they did or didn't have, didn't know if someone did or didn't take money. So yet the blame continues. Who or what's being covered up is the question I think a lot of us are asking, no matter which side of the table you sit on. Last week, we heard the discussion from this board about an auditing committee and the search by at least one commissioner, if not a couple, trying to find an external auditor to help fix the problems at the fairgrounds. I'd just like to interject here and make an apology to Commissioner Williams if I gave the perception of victim blaming last week. That was not my intent, and I'd like to make a public apology here for that. As I continue, I've been reading 2 CFR 200-303, the internal control report, the attachments between Sheriff Wheeler and the ICCO, Brian Wurst, Hyde Bailey, and the rest, and trying to get my head wrapped around this whole procurement thing. I'm glad that's not my day job, because at the end of it, it just leaves me with more questions than answers. So here I go, and I'm hoping these can get put on your next agenda. I will submit my questions in writing for your reference. Last week, it was referenced again that at least one or more commissioners had started conversations with some outside companies to do the external audit for the fairgrounds. I'm wanting to know if you were using a set of documented procurement procedures as are identified in 200.318 and again in 200.509 of the federal procurement statutes. And they outline that you're supposed to follow 200.317 through 200.3.27, along with any office or county specific procedures. So in your search, I was just wanting to make sure you were following the laws. And if you are, can I get a copy of whatever document and procedures you're following? And if not, my question would be a follow-up of why not? Of the potential contractors, what steps were taken to include attracting small and minority businesses, women's business enterprises, and labor surplus area firms? I know I'm running out of time. Why did you do it if there wasn't a
Miss
request?
Anderson, thank you. I intend to be consistent today,
Okay.
as I try to be consistent. And
Thank
I
you.
appreciate. Thank you, Miss Anderson. Miss Plant.
Jonna Plant, Sagal. What is the purpose for bringing up so many things of the past of Asia Williams? Is she up for re-election? I don't think so. I would love to find out what past and Steve Bradshaw's past. I've seen.
Miss Plant, I'll give you this 5 seconds, but I'm just going to tell you that you're coming in and out, so I don't know if it's your microphone or whatever, but it's a struggle for me to hear. And I'll give you that time back. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm confused why Asia's being strung over the coals. She's not up for re-election, and a lot of these things are before she was elected. I don't think you, Luke, or Steve Bradshaw would like somebody looking at your past, bringing things up at a meeting, a business meeting, and then you not being able to defend yourself. I could claim a lot of things about either one of you, and you wouldn't sit there and take it. So I don't understand the double standards, but it feels like harassment. It feels like there's a lot of things going on here, and you guys are worried about law. lawsuits. This is harassment, it feels like to me, and it's getting frustrating to watch. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plant.
Yeah, we take it every Tuesday.
Ms. Fry? Ms. Jessica Fry, do you have comments for the record?
Can you hear me?
You were broken as you were coming in, but go ahead, Ms. Fry.
Okay. With
There you
all
go.
the finger pointing going on, can you hear me?
Yes, Jessica. Please state your name for the record.
Jessica Fry for the record. This is my first time on here, excuse me. Okay, you ready?
Go ahead.
With all the finger pointing going on, it seems people continue to forget the Idaho Code 22-204 clearly states it is the Fair Board who is responsible for the safekeeping of all monies received by the fair. We have tried to unveil the truth around this situation for the last year. The Fair Board has finally admitted in writing no written budgetary meetings or presentations have existed since 2014. Yes, that means they have been in operation for the last 10 years without a budget plan. This is the same board who has been telling us since January that everything they do needs to be done in a plan. The same board who refused the RV grant money since they were advised by their lawyer it was not legal.
Would that be the same lawyer that was
I can't. I'm not.
representative for him for the last 12 years?
Commissioner Bradshaw.
I'm gonna hush up.
If we could follow ordinance 1-200, that'd be super. So it appears, and it says, and I will repeat, which I read, the board will not engage with dialogue with the presenter during this session, but rather may choose to schedule the presenter's topic for board consideration at a future business meeting. And I would kindly ask for all of us that are sitting up here at this table, let's try to follow our ordinances as they exist, not as we want them to exist. Is there anybody, I'm going to get to you, Ms. Kramer. I'm going to go through the online folks first. Is there anybody else online who would like to make a comment? Please raise your hand and you will be given 3 minutes. Spencer, I see there was a little yellow box around your name. I'm not sure if you wanted to comment. Please raise your hand if not. All right, going once. Nope. There you are. Spencer, go ahead, Mr. Hutchings.
After what happened last week, it's just getting to be worse, isn't it? I'm really disappointed that you keep calling recesses. I wish we could just hash through this stuff, Luke. I know it's difficult, but I mean, you got voted chairman, so you might want to just kind of work through this stuff. That would be my advice anyways. I don't think these recesses are helping anything. And I really like to, I don't even know how to approach this. I think the continued attacks on Asia are getting to be pretty predictable, and they're all coming from the same group of people with the same intentions. And it seems to me like they're just trying to publicly assassinate her in the media. What do they call that? Media lynching. So I don't know what the point of this is. She's the only one up there that's actually working for the people, I think. I don't know what Steve's even doing there anymore. He seems to have completely checked out. So I really wish that we could get back to the business of the county, and that would include how has the records request for the various financials of the fairgrounds going? Have you been able to get that stuff, Luke? I know you said you were going to do it, and I just wondered if you'd made any progress on that. And I guess you don't feel like answering, which is typical. I'd still like to see what the cash in and cash out at the fairgrounds has been. I think everybody would like to see it so we can move on. I really hope there's nothing there to look at. I hope it's no big deal, but I wouldn't be asking for it if myself and a bunch of other people didn't think that there was something there. So you said you were going to do it. You committed to doing it, Luke. I hope you follow through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchings. Ms. Fry, you're back. I will allow you to have two 2 minutes, which is what you had remaining of your time.
I don't remember where I left off here. I was talking about the fair board, that the same board refused the RV grant money since they were advised by their lawyer it was not legal to accept the money because they hadn't submitted the plan. The same board who told us just a month ago that they still don't have their budget. They are
Jessica, going once. All right. Is there anybody else online that would like to make a comment today? Ms. Kramer?
Jennifer Kramer for the record. I fail to see, excuse me, how publicly attacking Asia benefits the county. I often disagree with Luke Omott and Steve Bradshaw's actions and decisions, but I don't support digging through their past to berate them publicly on something that has nothing to do with Bonner County business. I'd like to see the commissioners work together for the good of the county, as Asia suggested last week. And I'd also like to see the public hold the commissioners accountable for their actions, decisions, and behaviors as commissioners and stop bringing up the past. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Bowman?
Susan Bowman for the record. I echo what Ms. Kramer just said. And I would like to expand on that because there's a lot of things that have kind of been lost in the shuffle. So really what I think you guys are supposed to be doing is governing and managing our money in a proper way. All this other talk about Asia's taxes, all that stuff is just, it doesn't have any bearing on the business of the county. I mean, I could stand up here and talk about your DUIs or talk about your bankruptcies. What will that do for our county, folks? That won't do anything for our county. It's time for us to come together as people, unite, and try to just start doing the business of the county. So along those lines, I'd like to bring up an issue. It was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that Asia had she had, I guess, a proposal to manage the county properties. And I guess it would be Christian, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she proposed that Christian would then start managing the county properties because they're currently just unmanaged. And this, everybody knows it has property. If you don't manage them, you're going to have some kind of money that you're going to be paying for that sooner or later. So the two of you voted that down, and then you said, we'll workshop it. So just curious if you've actually scheduled that workshop, and if not, why? And I'm going to encourage you to do that so that we could revisit that, and actually, this could save us money. You know, actually having people managing properties in the county could most certainly save us money. So if you want to be fiscal conservatives, I recommend that you start voting that way. And this would be one way that you could do it. So hopefully you will answer my question about the workshop. I'm guessing you're probably not.
Well, he can. The ordinance, for some reason, we're not reading the rest of the ordinance. It does say that you can direct it at an individual for clarification, as it also says that the chair is not to entertain derogatory stuff. So they have the power. And I think as we come towards the cold weather, that question, I would like to know the answer as well, because we do not have what was currently happening before I made that request was Christian was just doing it without officially doing it, which isn't the appropriate way. And so both he and our director Howard wanted that to be an official so that it can really be going through all versus fire putting out. Like we had a water heater that went out at Blue Lake, and that cost us 10 grand. We don't frequent that building. And so what would we have been able to save had we done that? And I've been waiting for the workshop as well. So I think that's reasonable to say, when are we going to identify who's managing property as we come? We're freezing weather at night already, so.
Yeah, so would you please put that on the agenda?
Thank you. Is there anybody else in person? Cheryl?
Cheryl Messer for the record. I'm hoping this will be a positive thing to ask. I agree with you. I want Luke on your website, lukealmett.com, on your campaign page, where it says, I'm just going to skip through a few things to get into what I want to request. Residents across Bonner County are frustrated with the rapid growth. We can update our comprehensive plan and abide by it. We must. Our comprehensive plan and regulations must be updated, followed, and reflect the will of the people. County residents invested years into the sub-area committee's comprehensive plan, and our comp plan went in on February of 2020. So we have 3 years there, and about 3 years they worked on it. We're 6 years, going on 7 years into this. Use these documents to start the comprehensive plan update. Pause all comprehensive plan amendments and zone changes until the comp plan is updated. Hold workshops, get our citizens involved in government, update the zone map, and have fidelity in the process. Okay, one of the things that's been a glaring error from the last comp plan, and I've gone over it with planning, and I've talked to you guys about it, but I'm going to ask that you schedule something to look at this. It'd be a simple fix for an error that's been done. It says in our soils under natural resources component that we have had, it says prime farmland, the slope is no more than 6%. And then it talks about a trend in the land use in some parts of Bonner County has been the loss of some prime farmland to urban uses. The loss of prime farmland to other uses puts pressure on marginal lands, and residential development can interfere with agricultural practices. Also, the development of the 5 and 10 acre ranchettes have contributed to Bonner County's problems with noxious weeds. There was a matrix that was done under that comprehensive plan back in 2005. Before the 2008 final was done and updated in the revised code. And it clearly says for prime farmland, ag land, greater than or equal to 20 acres. Transportation shows public right-of-way paved, gravel, private easement, U.S. Forest Service, et cetera, for transportation. Slope, 0 to 30%. And then it says use prime ag forest land. The 10s, the 10 to 20, which means not up to 19.999, was narrowed to
Ms.
transportation.
Messer, time is up, and I would like to know on the record, are you representing yourself in these comments today? Or is this a
I'm taking a break, and I'm doing it as a citizen. And I have handouts for each of you, if you'd please look at it.
Please give them to the clerk so they can be entered into the record. I believe that is being addressed.
Cheryl, can you actually send an email of what you're asking to be on the agenda? Because I think I heard you say you want it to get addressed. Yes. And then we can make sure it gets added. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kramer, you're going to be the last one.
Good morning, commissioners. I have a couple of things. One is in regards to the cost and the time for all the public records requests. I would like the commission to put an agenda item for an upcoming hearing to have all public records requests made publicly available on the Bonner County website. So those who, a lot of these records requests are for the same content. And if people could see what others had already previously requested and self-serve, that would be a big boon for the time constraints on the individuals who are currently compiling all of that information. And then the second item that I would like to have discussed is in the order of agendas, the commissioner's reports are always done in District 1, District 2, and District 3, sequentially in that order. And I think that it's only reasonable that those actually do a round-robin rotation because they're frequently used as a point of sort of someone to get the last word in and let their opinion be the last one that's heard rather than a matter of fact. And so I would suggest or ask that there another agenda item be placed to change the order of agenda so that those district reports are rotated on a weekly basis. Thank you.
Thank you for your suggestions. I'll put those on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. All right, we will now move. Our next agendized item is to adopt the order of agenda.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the amendment. Was there an amendment?
Yes, it's
Okay. I move to approve the amendment of the agenda by adding planning item number 2, action item, discussion decision regarding engineering contract with 7B Engineering.
I second the motion.
There is a motion and a second to amend the order of agenda. Is there any discussion amongst the board?
I have no questions.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I would now entertain a motion to adopt the order of agenda as amended.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the order of agenda as amended.
I second the motion.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion amongst the Board of Commissioners?
I have no questions.
Hearing none, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 The motion carries and the agenda as amended is passed. All right, District 1 Commissioner report.
It is the holiday season. My request would be, because of the holiday season and we are all American citizens, we're all citizens of Bonner County, and we're supposed to be brothers and sisters, that we have a ceasefire at least through the holiday season. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Bradshaw. Commissioner Williams.
All right. So I published out our Spirit Valley precinct voting record, and we have a lot of room for improvement. We had 36.4% of registered voters vote in that particular election. I know that's coming off of doing a recall in that area. I did do a research and put out some questions to that region as to why we're not getting a good amount of turnout. And a lot of people are coming back with the same answer, that they've moved from places where they get voter guides, and we don't do voter guides. And so people that don't know anything about the election are just choosing basically to wait until a presidential election because that's where it matters to them. But in terms of local elections such as the one we just had, they don't get the information. And many also recognize that, yes, they could go out and research the individual people, but the reality is they don't. And so there's room for improvement on that area to see if we can't encourage more people to vote. In elections in general, local elections matter significantly, and I think the Board of Commissioners is a perfect example of why local elections matter significantly.
Here, here.
I'm going to advance, kind of give notice of one of the things. So I decided when I took on Spirit Valley as a precinct that I was going to do town halls like for after the legislative session. So I'm using the date of April 20th, waiting for confirmation that our center isn't being used that day. But I'm going to combine it with the Spirit Valley report out, but also, since we are having an election in May, to offer for all of the people running to come to Spirit Valley only if your race impacts that precinct. So it would be all commissioners, but like an LD1 representative won't be invited to be a speaker because our area can't vote for LD1, we're LD2, and not have any of the vendors. That way we can get some really good questions. I personally don't see some of these questionnaires that people vote on or that you come from like the Republican committee. They don't necessarily capture all of the questions that the citizens may have about those functions. So I'm also gathering questions that you would like to see people answer that are running for some of these positions, because I want to try to impact in my particular Spirit Valley, I'm being specific on this, the issue of 36% is not a good number of people voting when we have elections coming forward. So I'll give confirmation on that. Wayne Martin is not here, but he's wanting a town hall in Edgemere, and that's going to look like it's going to be November or December. I have received a significant number of questions from Cocoala, so I'm going to actually advance and tell you in the month of January, I will do the Cocoala Town Hall. But for these months of November and December, I'm just going to gather their issues and concerns so that we can resolve some of those things once I hit the January date. Priest River, meals on Mondays, they will check your blood pressure. There's no pay donation. Tonight is Central Committee meeting at 6:30, which will be terribly, terribly long, because I know that they are asking that everybody stay until we resolve some of the issues related to the bylaws. Thank you to Road and Bridge. We have had significant amount of issues with roads in Blanchard. We did have a Vista down there messing up the road that we just got built. And so Jason did reach out and talk about that with Avista. So hopefully that gets corrected. We are going to have a discussion with Avista or with Road and Bridge. It's just we're entering into the busy season for Road and Bridge. So trying to do a weekend review to kind of explain what happened last week that you may not be privy to, with also a request that the board kind of addressed. We had a special meeting and it wasn't noticed saying that it was going to be on Zoom, but Zoom was available. And so there's a request from the community that if we're going to continue to do special meetings instead of tacking it on to Tuesday's business, that they actually be Zoomed, and I'm gonna put that on the agenda because we're doing it. And Thursdays was an example of some people could have done it by Zoom instead of coming to the meeting in person. So I'm gonna add that on the agenda. And that is craft fair for Clark Fork is on the 25th of this month, and it's from 9 to 3 p.m. Everybody's welcome. It's a great way to support your local communities. So any questions about District 2? Oh, that'll end my report.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I will start with responding for the information which I had here, and having watched the video, Mr. Hutchings, you could have seen that I brought it with me prior to the meeting. So I did submit a public records request to the Bonner County Fairgrounds, and here are the responses that I received. I asked for a list of conditions stated by Bonner County Fair Board Chairman Tim Mahan on Friday, October 20th, 2023. This record does not exist. However, that was an executive session. Unfortunately, thanks to the good work without authorization to surveil our executive sessions, once that video is provided, that record will exist. Number 2, a record of all payments issued to the bookkeeper hired by the Bonner County Fair Board from the period of 2014 to present and the scope of services. The Bonner County Fair Board hired a bookkeeper in August of 2023. Number 3, copies of all certified budgets presented to the Board of County Commissioners under Idaho statute from 2014 to present, detailing the probable income and balances remaining in its treasury and the amount to derive from a levied property taxes. And it said, please see the enclosed records. The enclosed records included the records maintained by Bonner County and audited by Bonner County. There was nothing showing the probable income and balances remaining in its treasury. Number 4, copies of all noticed Fair Board meetings and workshops discussing annual budgets and the adoption of the certified budget for presentation to the BOCC for fiscal years 2014 to present. These records do not exist. Number 5, copies of the meeting minutes related to item number 4. These records do not exist. Number 6, copies of the publications in an official newspaper of general circulation, the detailed statements of all monies received and expended in connection with the operations of the fair as per Idaho Code 22-204 for fiscal years 2014 to present. These records do not exist. In regards to what happened last week I attended a United Against Hate seminar that was put on by the U.S. Attorney at the Hartwood Center, and there were a number of speakers. I personally found Pastor Hinderly to be very convincing when he talked about hate and the difference between fear versus love. Prosecutor Marshall gave an excellent example of a human tragedy from a murder that took place in 2017 of a young man who was murdered. And if you were to just look at it from the outside, it could appear that it was a hate crime, but there was nothing when the prosecutor and their staff went through the records to find that it was a hate crime, but it sure as hell was a crime. And Prosecutor Marshall and his staff had to watch a GoPro video of this poor kid being stabbed to death by another kid. That sounds tragic. That's just awful. I attended a Elks Veterans and Senior Dinner on Wednesday, and I'll tell you, it was really nice to see the members of our county coming out to feed each other and the gratitude that was on their faces as people received a turkey or a ham meal that was provided by one of the many generous philanthropic organizations of Bonner County. I then washed dishes at another one on Friday because that's about my skill set. And I was only told I failed on 2 of the pans, but I went back into the soap. The election canvass did take place, and like Commissioner Williams said, it's pretty fascinating to observe that as a old government teacher, to see that during the recall elections we were at presidential turnout, and then during this election across all of the county we were at about 35-ish%, which is very low. And it could be to the ebb and flow of the passions of people, also could potentially, I believe, be the disgust with politics at this time. There also just wasn't a lot of stuff on the ballots. There were a number of precincts who had nothing on the ballot. I have faith that the election of 2024 in May will be robust. And finally, one of the things that I would do as a tradition in my classroom is I would read the various excerpts from the Thanksgiving proclamations. And today for Bonner County, I'm going to read part of the very first one, which was by my favorite president, George Washington. But I do have 45 other favorite presidents because they lead our great nation. And it starts with, by the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor. And whereas both houses of Congress have by their joint committee requested me to recommend to the people of the United States a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many signal favors of Almighty God, especially by affording them an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for their safety and happiness. Well said, Mr. Washington. And I would remind people that when we look at the politics of the day, in order for us to have the opportunity to exercise our free speech, first Americans had to overthrow the yoke of tyranny and defeat the mightiest country at that time in the history of the world. When President Washington brought forth a treaty to be signed by the Senate, and they said, no, we want to read it first, he stormed out and never again returned to the halls of Congress. That is what makes our country great. And I would just like to say happy Thanksgiving to the citizens, to our employees, and all of the people of our great nation and the world, because it is something special that we get to participate in. With that, I would move to our next agendized item, which is the consent agenda. And I'm not sure if the Pattersons are out there, but I'm going to put this there you are, Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. Item 1, there is a traffic safety supply sign which will be coming up, and it is going to be reimbursable for $15,650. The BOCC had a National Association of Counties annual membership for $816. There is a contract for temporary moorage of the sheriff's vessel of the Marine Division for $1,650. For the sheriff, laptops for the detectives to the tune of $6,759.25. There is a confidential item to the cost of $27,984.66. And there is another confidential item to the tune of $10,708.89. At this time, I would entertain a motion.
I move to amend the consent agenda. Under District 1 report, it says Commissioner Bradshaw gave an extensive report of issues and activities. And then I actually would like to remove the NAC payment of $816. Notice was given to the board that that membership requires a board decision to be a member of it. And I think that it needs us to actually weigh, we already pay for Idaho Association of Counties. That's what all of our conferences have been with. I don't know that it's reasonable and necessary to pay for two, but more than that, Clerk Rosedale had emailed to the commissioners that this should come before the board, not just the bill, but the actual membership. So those are my amendments to remove those two items.
Is there a second
For the amendment?
for her amendment?
I didn't hear the part about Bradshaw.
It says that you gave an extensive report. I think it might be a filler statement that staff is writing in there, but that's not.
I gave an extensive report on.
On your commissioner's report in the minutes.
Yeah, I think it's a typo.
I don't know that I've ever done an extensive.
So I'm
Yeah.
saying that we have to
Sorry.
remove that,
Yeah, we
and
should correct that.
Well, yes. So is there a second?
I'll second that.
So is there a second? There is a motion and a second to amend the item in regards to the discussion of the National Association of Counties. The consent agenda is a way for it to come before the board. The National Association of Counties is a different organization that lobbies, and the gentleman's name is Skip Brandt, who has attended. He is a commissioner from Idaho County who has spoken with us. We did have a conversation about our membership. And the Idaho Association of Counties is our statewide organization that works within the state of Idaho. The National Association of Counties is a national association that lobbies at the federal governments for certain items, such as the windmill projects that are going on in southern Idaho. And they aren't lobbying for it. They're lobbying to actually provide counties to have greater impact and say, which is a challenging proposition because counties want to have a seat at the table because we understand that it affects our residents and our citizens, but then we interface with the state government who also wants to have a seat at the table, and they send down through the legislature their stuff, but then we're also dealing with the federal government, and Bonner County is a wonderful example of that when we have approximately 45% of our dirt is federal dirt. And the National Association of Counties promotes such amazing projects and programs as the Good Neighbor Authority, which distinguishes us, the state of Idaho, and especially Bonner County, with our bonfire program, as having a seat at the table to protect our residents and our lands. So I am 100% in support of maintaining our membership with the National Association of Counties.
so I would like to ask for a process because it's supposed to go first, second, people, board discussion. Are you not going to do people discussion on that issue?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So the issue, Bonner County actually has, it would be a new membership. And so
We're members right now, Commissioner
because you
Williams.
got slid through a consent agenda on a different one under the same board, and I had issue with it, which is why Clerk Rosedale actually responded to the email when this came up again, that I'm the one who created issue of sliding a bill in to pay for a renewal in membership, when he actually told you it needed to be a decision at the board level. So it should have come here, and everybody should have said, do we want to be members of NACO? And then we had that discussion. What happened was somebody just put the bill for the membership in the batch, and I didn't notice that that bill was there. And I asked Rosedale, how did this happen when you literally told us it needed to be voted on? And so when this came back, he said it needs to be brought forward to be discussed. This is just asking us to pay for it. But if we're not going to have, I'm not making a comment on what it actually does. I'm making a comment as, do we need it right now with our very constrained budget? $900 doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot. And they will do all of the things that you just described on their own. And in my opinion, we are running so lean right now, we can use our own senators to bring forth our issues at the state and then use our elected at the federal level. We don't need this membership to actually move forward. The prior board, actually, they didn't have this on board at that time. I don't see the need for the expense at this time, given, for all of you who weren't present on Thursday, the DMV project is not in that building anymore because we didn't have the funds necessary to do the planning for the full project prior to putting that in. When we're doing things like that, I don't believe it's reasonable for us to spend money on ways that aren't absolute needs when that's something that we're making decisions on. This should be a need. This is really a want. I don't think it's reasonable and necessary at this time because we're not giving people the funds that they need to operate reasonably to say, let's be a member of something that's going to go on without us. It's not necessary. So that's my argument for it.
You have any discussion, Commissioner? Roll call vote on the amendment.
Yes.
No.
No.
The motion fails. I would now entertain a motion.
So I have a motion to amend only the correction of Commissioner 1, and I'll segregate it out because he agreed with that amendment. So I motion to amend the agenda to remove the statement under District 1 report.
I would amend the amendment to correct the statement and return it to the clerk. Is there a second to the amendment?
I would second that.
There is a second to the amendment. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
I would now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. I will step down from the chair. Oh,
Mr. Chairman, based on the information before us, I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I will step down from the chair and second the motion. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote.
No.
Yes?
Yes.
The motion passes. Our next item on the agenda is Director Ron Stoltz with Justice Services.
Finally.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, sir.
I just have one, should be quick item. I have before you the Bonner County Justice Services Department Operating Agreement for FY 23-24. It's recommended that the board approve the Bonner County Justice Services Department Operating Agreement as approved by legal. This agreement sets forth the operating plan for Bonner County Justice Services for the fiscal year 23-24 as supported by legislative code. Basically what it does is it kind of sets forth my marching orders between the Board of County Commissioners and the court, as they both oversee my department and basically oversee me. And Judge Breeze has signed this as an agreement that the court will work with the commissioners to oversee justice services.
Move to approve the Justice Services Operating Agreement, which sets the operating plan for justice services for FY 23-24 as supported by legislative code.
I second the motion.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this agendized item? Is there any discussion amongst the Board of Commissioners?
I have no discussion. I won't have any discussion on any of the rest of the agenda, actually.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
The motion carries. Thank you, Director. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you.
Hope your business slows down.
Yeah, me too.
Our next agendized item is planning with Director Gabel.
Morning, Commissioners, members of the public. Jake Gabel, Planning Director. So before you, item number one is the It's a resolution for a right-of-way vacation for Thomas Street and a portion of Markham Street, Campbell Street, and an alley. This is planning file VS 0004-22. So the Board of County Commissioners held a public hearing on October 25th, 2023, and for the right-of-way vacation or abandonment of the Thomas Street, portion of Markham Street, Campbell Street, and an alley lying in portion section 30, Township 56 North, Range 3 West, Coast of Oregon, Idaho. The board approved the vacate Thomas Street, a portion of Markham Street, and the alley. They did not approve the vacation of Campbell Street. The resolution before you is finalize that decision by the board. So as like a process change by the planning department, instead of having those resolutions in hand at the hearings, we're waiting until those hearings get decided, and then including all of your changes or deliberations and your findings of fact to make those resolutions more robust. So this is a recommendation by council to do it this way. It elongates that process a little bit, but it makes it a lot more finalized. So that's the change and why it's coming before you guys at business.
Thank you, Director. Absolutely.
And this has been reviewed by legal, of course.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, based on the information before us, I move that the county approved Resolution 2023-93 for right-of-way vacation for Thomas Street and a portion of Markham Street, Campbell Street, and an alley.
Second the motion.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any public discussion on this agendized item?
Dave Bowman for the record. I just want to say I like to see process going in that direction instead of having the stuff predetermined before you ever sit to decide. Write it up after the fact. So bravo. Let's see more of the same.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Is there any other public comment on this agendized item? Is there any discussion amongst the Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
The motion carries. Director?
So the second item before you today is the engineering contract with 7B Engineering. So the planning department is seeking approval of a professional services contract for engineering services with 7B Engineering. This would only be utilized on a rare case scenario when the Bonner County Engineering Department cannot review a conflict or cannot not review a project due to workload or conflict of interest. As a note, this is also a pass-through expense to the county, so we send it out for review. This is how it works internally with our current engineering department. So we send it to the engineering department, they charge us, we charge the customer, we get reimbursed and reimbursed. So when we were down to one engineer, I had some concerns that if we lost the other engineer, everything in our department would come to a halt. So I look back to who our current engineering contract is with, and it expired back in 2021. It was with JUB Engineering previously. I'll do that. It was with JUB Engineering previously, and again, it expired in 2021. I talked to two other engineering firms. I only received one contract that was with 7B Engineering. Dan Larson's in the room. He owns that engineering firm. So this was reviewed by legal. My expectation that if we remain with the two engineers we have now, that this would be a very rare case, probably less than $1,000 a year. Yeah, so it's a best management practice to have a backup.
And it is a pass-through.
Like I said, yes, it's a pass-through account.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, based on the information before us, I move that the county approve the professional services contract with 7B Engineering.
I second the motion.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any public discussion on this item? Mr. Bowman? Oh. Okay.
Dave Bowman for the record. So could you give an example of a conflict of interest in this kind of a case? And then if it's a conflict of interest, is that also a pass-through? Or only when you're overloaded?
So, for example, if we're under contract, I think one scenario came up when we were down to one engineer. We only had Spencer, and we were currently under contract with an engineering firm that was, I think, engineering something with the building across the street. And he said, hey, this could be a potential conflict of interest because we're under contract with them, and then I'm weighing in on a decision on something, reviewing one of their other projects. So he had some concerns on that. And And then he said, well, just send it out to your engineer for review. And I looked and we don't have a contract with an engineer. So I started looking around. And then, like I said, the other one would be workload. So if their workload gets too big, or if it's an expertise that they don't have, then we have an outside firm we can send it to for review. So, and
Are both of those passed through?
absolutely, yeah. So whatever we get charged by 7B Engineering, we would then turn on or pass through to the applicant saying the cost is this for the review. So,
Ask a question on that. Are
Sure.
does the individual know if the reason you're not able to do it is because you're of workload, so that they have the option to wait until your workload goes down and not incur that fee? Because I could see that being a question from.
so this is workload on the engineering department downstairs, not on planning. But if that scenario comes up, I can give them that option. Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Kramer, do you have a question on this agendized item?
Yes, I do. I'm curious, in either the case of the lack of expertise or conflict of interest or any of the following, why an individual wouldn't be able to retain their own qualified engineer and have those plans submitted to the county for approval.
So this is engineered plans coming to the department that's being reviewed internally. So it's like a best practice, just like a surveyor, right? They put a stamp on a survey, you send it out to the county surveyor for review. They always find little corrections within the survey, mistypes, or they validate calculations. So it's a kind of a best management practice. There's some positions in our code that require a second review on engineering.
So is this somewhat an example of trust but verify?
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Kramer. Are there any other questions on this agenda? Ms. Bowman?
What kind of engineer are we talking about? Storm, like stormwater
Yep,
structural?
stormwater erosion control could be public roads that are the engineered plans for public roads.
Civil.
Yeah, it's all civil engineering,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah. We're not looking at buildings or anything like that. It's civil engineering relating to planning files.
Is there any discussion amongst the Board of Commissioners?
None.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Thank you, Director, and happy Thanksgiving to you too. Our next agendized item is with Road and Bridge and Matt Mulder.
Good morning, Matt Mulder, the staff engineer for the Road and Bridge Department. In 2022, Governor Little signed the Senate Bill 1359, which has been called the Leading Idaho Local Bridge Program, and that allotted $200 million in Idaho surplus funds to repair and replace local bridges throughout the state. The state has over 400 bridges that are rated in poor condition, and the governor and the legislator hoped to address about half of those with this funding. And they opened this up with through LTAC, the Local Highway Technical Assistance Council, to administer this program, and opened that up for the local cities and the counties to apply for essentially grant funds to replace these bridges in poor condition. So within Bonner County, we had 11 bridges out of 39 that were rated in poor condition. And so we were able to submit half of those for consideration to be repaired or replaced. And so we submitted 5, and to date, 4 of the 5 bridges have been selected for funding to be replaced. The first of the bridges was Grouse Creek Road over Grouse Creek. And now the next 3 bridges have been selected for funding in these subsequent rounds. These are the Rapid Lightning Bridge number 4, Colburn Culver Road over the Pack River, and Colburn Culver Road over the Grouse Creek. So before the board today is an agreement that LTAC has sent us that will make it so the county signs on and say, yes, we still want you to give us these bridge funds and administer these projects to replace these bridges. There's no match required from Bonner County funds, as that's how this program has been structured by the state. So I recommend that the county sign this agreement to replace 3 of these bridges. And it sounds like in a subsequent round of funding, our 5th and final bridge is likely to get funded in the next round as well. So we are hopeful for that.
Do you have a total amount that these bridges will be
We don't have any engineered design plans for them yet, so we don't have a real specific engineer's estimate, but I'm anticipating the shorter bridges probably $1.5 million, the longer bridge over the Pack River on Colburn, probably $2.5 million, maybe even $3 million. It's a lot of money for bridges. If this were being done under the federal aid bridge program with all the federal requirements, these would be triple the cost. So using the state funds eliminates a lot of the red tape and makes these bridges a lot more cost effective.
So we're getting millions of dollars worth of bridges that you're presenting to us here today with a $0 match for Bonner County.
That is correct.
I think that's a good deal.
Our tax dollars coming out.
Okay. I would love to hear a motion saying zero cost, well,
Yeah.
sort of, in this regard, because it's still our tax dollars.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move the Board of Commissioners approve LTAC and local agreement, Leading Idaho Bridge Program, bridge number KN 20645, KN 30225, and KN 30235 to replace the Rapid Lightning Bridge number 4, Colburn Culver at Grouse Creek Bridge, and the Colburn Culver at Pack River North Bridge.
I second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there public discussion on this agendized item? Mr. Kramer?
Yeah, there's two places, Matt, where Colburn crosses the Pack River.
This is the north crossing.
The north, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other public comment on this agendized item? Is there any discussion amongst the Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 The motion carries.
Thank you.
And it is 10:49. There will be a 5-minute recess before we proceed into executive session.